citizens of Newman, in your name, we ask for this. Thank you. Amen.
Thank you, Mike. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Kane?
Present.
Councilmember Kelly?
Present.
Councilmember Freequal?
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Martina?
Present.
Mayor Fantasia?
Present. Declarations of conflicts of interest. None this evening. No ceremonial matters. Item 7, items from the public, non-agenda items. If anybody has anything they'd like to bring before us that is not on tonight's posted agenda, now would be the time. Yes, sir. Just state your name and address and for the record.
Hello, my name is Ruben Imperial. I'm with Stanislaus County Behavioral Health and Recovery Services. We're the county's mental health, alcohol, and drug treatment and prevention services provider. I was invited by Chief Ulivari to inform the council of some work that we'll be doing here with him and the Family Resource Center and some of the, potentially the schools around alcohol and drug prevention. As part of the Stanislaus County Prevention Plan, we are looking to support local communities in their prevention efforts. And with Newman passing the social host ordinance, we contacted Chief Ulivari to begin to work with him on those, on the community-based approach to prevention, which is the document you have in front of you, which involves policy development, enforcement, education, and media and skill development. So I just wanted to inform the council that we will be working with him, and hopefully in the next year we'd be able to implement or assist in implementing a variety of prevention strategies here in the city, working with Chief Ulivari, especially around graduation season time and through the summer. So.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any other non-agenda items? Seeing none, we'll move right into the consent calendar. Item A, waive all readings of ordinances and resolutions as set by title. B, approval of warrants, and C, approval of minutes of the February 12, 2008 regular meeting.
I move for approval.
I second that motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you very much. Item 9, public hearings. We have one this evening. Adopt resolution number 2008, next to number, a resolution declaring the existence of a public nuisance under ordinance number 95-4.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the City Council. We have several items before you tonight on abatements, and I'd like to go over each one with you. The first one is 1041 Grackle, and this was a situation which was on-viewed by our community service officer, Edgar Lopez. You have in front of you a set of photographs of the situation described as barbecue grills, ice chest, ladder, and debris located in the front of the property, which has been abated by the homeowner. The second item, bags of cans and bottles throughout the backyard. Doesn't really adequately describe the situation. You have photos in front of you depicting the situation.
We don't have photos, Chief.
Oh, okay.
We have one set
Oh, there's one set?
for the mayor.
We're going to pass them down.
Okay.
Color ones. So what you're talking about?
Yeah. So you'll see that there's an enormous amount of plastic bags, debris, and so on and so forth that's strewn throughout the backyard. And we have sent the homeowner the notice. It's been returned with a signed receipt. But they've cleaned up the front yard, but they've done nothing to the backyard. And the request is that the situation be abated.
Are we going to
And
have
I can go through each one of them if you like?
Yeah, why don't we?
Okay, okay. We'll do
Unless
that.
we need to do them all separate?
Okay. The second location is 1029 Grackle Court. This described as wood chip and debris located on property driveway. Excessive amount of tires, furniture, wood, and metal scraps, junk debris, and other miscellaneous items throughout the backyard. And again, we have photographs depicting this situation. We initially sent a letter to the homeowner received a response back from their attorney stating that they're no longer in possession of the property through bankruptcy, and it's now in the possession of Wachovia Mortgage. We sent them a notice, received no response from Wachovia Mortgage. And again, this situation was on view by our community service officer, Edgar Lopez. And again, request is to abate the problem. The next item before you is at 1932 Leslie. And this is described as trailer, junk and debris on side yard, boxes full of miscellaneous items from carport, vehicles, excessive amount of wood, metals, car parts, tires, appliances, bottles, trash, junk, debris, and other miscellaneous items throughout the backyard of the property. This is probably one of the most excessive cases of an abatement issue that's come to our attention thus far. And it's a severe situation without a doubt. This was a complaint that we received, investigated by Community Service Officer Edgar Lopez. He has made personal contact at the residence and has received no cooperation whatsoever in this situation. The next item that's listed on the agenda, we're pulling off 1104 Scooter Court, and Edgar Lopez has requested an extension on this to work with the property owner in removing this item. The next item is at 1133 T Street, described as stoves, refrigerator, cabinets, broken chair, sofa, desk, other furniture, stack of old doors, windows, bicycles, car parts, gym equipment, metal scrap, junk debris, and other miscellaneous objects, all located in the backyard of the property. We responded to a complaint on this issue here. We've sent out the notice. The post office sent the notice back stating that the owner has moved with no forwarding address, and the house is a vacant house at this time. And the request is to abate the problem. Next item on the abatement is located at 1222 Q Street, described as trash, junk, and debris on front lawn, box full of toys, tires, car rims, piles of wood, water heater, junk, debris, and other miscellaneous objects throughout the backyard of the property. Just, we responded to this location as a result of a complaint. We have sent out the notice, and we received no cooperation at all on this location. And again, request is to abate the nuisance. The last item is at 1238 Stevens Road. This was an on-view by Community Service Officer Edgar Lopez, described as a pile of wood, metal, and driveway located on our street. This has been cleaned up by the property owner. However, a white International Harvest flatbed truck, tall grass, weeds, stack of wooden pallets, car parts, junk, debris, and other miscellaneous objects throughout the backyard, which has not been addressed by the property owner. And we have sent out the notice and received no response, and the request is to abate the nuisance. And I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Questions for the chief? See none, I'll go ahead and open the public hearing. Would anybody like to comment on any of these abatements? Seeing no one, I'll close the public hearing and bring it back to the council.
I would move to adopt resolution number 2008, next to number, resolution declaring the existence of a public nuisance under ordinance number 95-4.
I second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you very much. Thank you, chief.
Thank you.
Michael, one comment. Don't we have two cleanups, spring and fall, that the city takes all this type of trash and debris at no cost to the citizens?
We're doing actually right now, through March, we will take your yard waste. If you want to place it at your curbside, Berlotti's will come by and pick up your yard waste, and lawn clippings and prunings and those types of things. And then the dates are, the first week of April will be the first cleanup.
Thank you. So there's plenty of time, space, and availability to get these cleaned up at no cost other than a little elbow grease.
Twice a year, people have the opportunity to remove the debris and junk from the yard
Thank
at
you.
no cost to them.
Okay, moving on to regular business. Item A, report on Joint Fire Agency's Injury Illness Protection Plan and related policies.
Thank you, Mayor. Tonight, what we have before you, and we're requesting adoption of an injury, illness, and protection plan. This plan was originally adopted and prepared by West Stanislaus Fire District, of which a lot of our volunteers are also members of the West Stanislaus Fire District. And also, it's been adopted by the City of Patterson's Fire Department. We are requesting that this city council adopt it as well. That way, all three agencies are working under the same IIP plan, is what it's called in the industry. I know Mr. Steve Hall is here, and he's familiar with the IIP program, and I'm sure that he can answer any questions that you may have regarding this document.
Questions?
I had this quick question, either Mel or Steve. Just basically, when I was reading through here, and I don't know if it's an individual agency. I was surprised to see under Y, in the Code 3 driving, there's no policy required under on Code 3 driving?
Members of the council, Steve Hall, Fire Marshal with the City of Patterson, West Stanislaus. The IIPP in front of you this evening is a working document. It's not stagnant, and we will be continuing to add sections in as we get them prepared. Once we get the Code 3 driving response written, it will be added to each of the documents, City of Patterson, City of Newman, and West Stanislaus. Currently, we're in a rewrite of the freeway response policy, which will include Code 3 driving, or lights and sirens, and have that admitted as soon as we get it complete.
I would think that'd probably be critical.
I agree. It's currently being worked on.
Okay, thanks, Steve.
Further questions? Do we need to adopt this?
Yeah, we can do it. We don't need a resolution. We can do it by minute order.
Okay. Does everybody,
I'm in agreement.
agreement?
I'm in agreement.
Agreed.
Yes.
Me too. Thank you very much. Item B, review and approve agreement with Central Valley Soccer League, Rio Olympico, and authorize the city manager to sign on behalf of the city of Newman.
Good evening, Mayor, council members. Staff recommends City Council to continue their agreement with the Central Valley Soccer League, Rio Olympico. The city has had an agreement with the Central Valley Soccer League since 2001. At that time, they used Dinsmore Park. Approximately 3.5 years ago, the league moved to Alfred Bush Rose Park at the council's request. The league has been utilizing our fields for 7 years. During this time, they've always been respectful to the park neighbors and the city staff. They clean up after their games, and they have paid to reseed the grass at Dinsmore at our request. They have the proper insurance certificate and always comply to the contract agreement. Therefore, staff recommends the City Council to continue its contract with the Central Valley Soccer League Rio Olympico. If you have any questions for myself or Daniel Azevedo, the chairperson for the league.
Michael, did you find out the contract with Louis Newman, the insurance rate on that?
I did not. What do we, liability, do 1 million? I believe we're still doing the 1 million, not the 3 million.
Okay.
The 3 million, that was a policy that was adopted for the
Streets.
downtown and street ferry events.
I guess that's the only thing that I had a question on is, is $1 million enough? When you have people, playing and different things like that. I know for other things, we're requiring a 3 million policy. That would be my only question. I don't know what everybody thought about
It's the same amount that we
that.
require for the baseball board also.
It's only $1 million for the baseball board. Any other questions? Does anybody have any other comments on that, or?
I just want to compliment him on that, because I walk by there on Monday mornings, and it's always cleaned up, looks great. So I compliment you on that. I know a lot of people are out there enjoying, soccer, so.
Further questions? Thank you, Terry.
Thank you.
and City Council. I'm the Parks and Recreation Commissioner Chairperson. On this item here, it's usually brought in front of the Parks and Rec Board, and we usually make a decision about the utilization of the Village Park. And I've been on the council for the last 11 years. So this kind of stuff should have been presented before our board, before coming to City Council. This way we can advise, say, that we give the go-ahead to provide all our fields that's been utilized. And also, make one statement, I'm also up for re-election today.
That's a good point. Why wasn't it taken
Yeah.
to their board first?
Actually, this is
It's a contract.
a contract that we've been working with, it's only been working through the city manager and the rec supervisor. I don't know that it's ever been forwarded to the Parks and Rec Commission. If this council so desires, again, they're an advisory board only. This council is ultimately the one that takes a decision on that. We can return this to the rec commission if you so desire, get their recommendation, and then bring it back to you for action. Future actions, we can take it that direction. Because we had a gentleman who came in and talked about the league several months ago, we brought it to the council's attention this time. Typically, this is something that we have administered in-house. So,
I guess I could
again-
see I'm sorry, Michael.
No, I was just saying, so that's why we brought it forward. Otherwise, again, it's something that we just handled in-house.
I guess I could see the point of the rec commission. I mean, I've heard in the past that, why is there a rec commission if things aren't brought before them, which involves the park? So I could see their point on this of why, it should have went to them first. He should have made a presentation to them. Then they could give their recommendation and then come to the council.
Normally, this is handled in-house, so we don't take it to the Parks and Rec. And at the time Daniel had addressed me, we didn't have a meeting to start in time, so we brought it here so that they could start on March 9th, their request date. But and he would have asked earlier had he known it had to go to Parks and Rec this time. Because normally, like we said, we usually handle it between the city manager and myself.
Well, we
Any
would
other
recommend
comments?
that the council take action tonight on the item so we can move forward with it, and then all future contracts or uses would then go to the Parks and Rec Commission. But then do we extend that to baseball as well? Because that's another contract that we have a long-standing contract with the Little League, and we just work that contract out in-house.
Well, I
and
guess,
take care of it.
I mean, the rec commission should be aware of what's happening, with the parks and ball fields and everything. So I think it should go to them first. I could see tonight that this needs to get going because there's a timetable, but I think in the future, we've given more powers to the planning commission to review more things. I think the rec commission should have the same authority.
We will forward those to the Rec Commission from this day forward.
Any other comments? If not, some direction.
I make a motion that we adopt the report on the Central Valley Soccer League, and we make that contract a good contract.
Second that motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you very much. Item C, report on appointments to fill vacancies on the Planning Commission, Recreation Commission, and Architecture Review Committee.
Thank you, Mayor. The first quarter of the calendar year is typically the year that our appointments on our three committees, which is Architectural Review, Planning Commission, and Recreation Commission, tend to come up. At this particular time, we have 2 vacancies on each of the commission. It just so happens we have 2 applications for each of the vacancies on each of the commissions. So, applying for or resubmitting their name for the Planning Commission is our current chairman, Paul Wallace, and longstanding Planning Commissioner, Tom Applegate. Applications for the Recreation Commission are from the current chairman, Richard Gayton, and also a new application from Chuck Messier. And then the third is reapplications for Mr. Kent Maddenwall and David Reed, and that's for the Architecture Review Committee. Those commissions would serve all 4 years in length.
Well, it's good to see that everybody wants to still stay on there. And usually we interview people, but I don't think we have to. Would any of the candidates like to make any comments on any of the boards, commissions, or if not? If not, we appreciate your volunteering, and I'll bring it back to the council.
I move for appointment of all these fine people, citizens of Newman, wanting to step up and do something.
I second that motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Congratulations, thank you very much.
They all had speeches prepared, I can tell.
I know, they all probably did. That's why I wanted to give them the opportunity for those big speeches, but.
Yeah.
Item D, report on the storm drain system master plan.
Thank you, Mayor. Tonight, we're going to have Mr. Bob Stoddard from Boyle Engineering come forward and do a storm drainage summary of the storm drainage master plan for you. As you know, it's been over a year now since the contract was signed with Boyle Engineering to do these master plans. It's a process the city's been going through since we recently adopted our general plan. So what we're doing today is just bringing a presentation to the council. Then in March, we will open up our public comment period and allow the public to review the documents and provide comment. And then we will bring this document back to the council in April for final action. So with that, I'm going to turn the microphone over to Mr. Bob Stoddard.
Took care of that shirt.
Ew.
Right in the heart.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, my name is Robert Stoddard. I'm the principal engineer with Boyle Engineering Corporation. Held that position for about 2.5 years, and prior to that, I was president of Stoddard Associates Engineers in House. And together, I have about 36 years of engineering experience. The city commissioned us to prepare the storm drainage master plan. We have done so. We have done so, and we're here tonight to present our findings and recommendations with regard to what we believe is the facilities which would best serve the expanded general plan area. The slide in front of you depicts that area. And in essence, the green areas are the areas that will be developed. There are a few areas that are also within the existing city limits or adjoining the city limits that aren't necessarily in the defined expanded general plan area. But all these sub areas that we have identified are synonymous with the general plan. We go through a process looking at various aspects of the community development, which will affect the rate of runoff from the community. One of those is the land use. We looked at the various land uses specified in the general plan, and those included the mixed density residential, medium density residential, commercial uses, industrial uses, public and quasi-public uses, and parks, recreation, and open space. This slide shows those various uses. The largest use is the residential use depicted in green. The other colors depict the other uses, the medium family residential, commercial, and industrial uses within the plan area. We also look at the various soil types. The methodology that we utilize to do the runoff calculations is what's referred to in the Stanislaus County standards as an advanced storm drainage design method. It's the TR 55 method. That's required when you're looking at drainages greater than 400 acres. And in this case, we are certainly doing that. And that methodology requires you looking at the native soil types, because the amount of runoff, again, is related to the types of soils. This figure depicts the soils in the plan area. The yellowish color are type B soils, and they're a relatively coarse soil. They range from A, B, C to D, with A being the coarser and D being the finer soils. And in essence, in the city of Newman, we have the B classes of soil to the west and D classes of soil to the east, based primarily on how the valley was formed, and you have the overflow area portion from old flooding in the San Joaquin River forming the soils on the east side, and then the alluvial plains start to encroach on that on the west side. This slide's a little bit difficult to read, but what it depicts are the minimum depth to groundwater as measured in various wells by the State Department of Water Resources and also as measured by the Central California Irrigation District. The reason this is important, we are considering or did consider utilizing detention basins as part of the storm drainage plan, and your ability to install detention basins is, especially if you're going to be discharging by gravity into those detention basins, requires a separation between the minimum groundwater and the bottom of the basin. So we look at these at this data to make sure that we're identifying basin locations where there's a high probability that they can be installed without much problem. We take the soil types, we take the land use information, we take this groundwater information. We also take this is moving on me here. Huh?
You need to go back.
Yeah, how do I go back? It just jumped on me. It's just moving around.
Skip over. It's not letting me go back to that side.
So I have to start all over and zip through it.
Yeah, it's not. There's something problem with it, with the slideshow.
Brett, give me one of those copies. I'll proceed off a paper copy till I get caught up with where we are stuck on the slide presentation. We talked about the groundwater elevations, and we took these various factors to come up with the basic background from which we would design the storm drainage plan. We did this through computer modeling. I was skipping through my slides without anybody touching the computer. And we used a model known as the stormwater management model, which was developed by the Environmental Protection Agency and was developed specifically for doing modeling of urban drainage systems. We have design criteria for conveyance facilities, and these come out of both the City of Newman standards and the County of Stanislaus standards, which are referenced in the City of Newman standards. We designed the conveyance systems to handle runoff from the 10-year, 24-hour storm hydrograph. We designed it to handle the discharge from detention basins, to be able to discharge detention basins within 48 hours. We designed the conveyance facilities to operate between 2 and 10 feet per second in velocities. And in cases of open channels, we have planned to design those similar to the way that the Sherman Parkway storm drainage channel has been designed. For storage facilities, now we're back caught up again. Where we were. We are assuming that, and we based some of our cost estimates on utilizing dual-use detention facilities. And I might, during this discussion, talk about direct discharge and talk about detained discharge. When I'm talking about direct discharge, I'm talking about the runoff moves directly from the catchment into the pipe or channel conveyance system and moves directly out to the point of discharge. In detained discharge, some point within that system, the water is detained to attenuate the peak flow rates, and also that can also provide some water quality benefits to the downstream receiving waters. We sized our storm drainage detention facilities in the options or in the plan alternatives that included detention basins to contain the 100-year 24-hour storm, and this standard evolved by moving through the city Newman standard into the Stanislaus County standard, which then mentions the city of Modesto standard for dual purpose basins. These facilities will have, these detention basins will have inlet facilities and outlet facilities to control the flow. There'll be separation between the bottom of the basins and the minimum groundwater levels, and we'll be able to empty them within 48 hours. And are you clicking me now? Yeah. Okay. We had some other guiding principles. Understanding that the stormwater detention will attenuate the runoff and has the potential to improve water quality, there's a desire, at least on our part, to utilize those when it makes sense because they do provide additional benefit. We've used those in other valley communities with quite success, especially the dual use type of systems. We wanted to minimize the points of discharge. Today, that might not be a big issue because you're not required to monitor the quality or the quantity of the stormwater that's being discharged from your community, but we anticipate that some point in the future that's probably going to happen, and by minimizing the number of points of discharge, you will have the fewest monitoring points, and therefore the amount of cost that would be associated with that type of monitoring program would be minimized. Also, we wanted to keep the number of pump stations to a minimum, and we do this by not allowing detention basins to go in to service real small developments. We recommend that the detention basins be at least 5 acres in size. That way they serve a substantial amount of developed area, and the number of basins and pump stations to evacuate those basins is reduced. Another part of formulating this plan is looking at what the drainage paths, the existing drainage paths are. And generally speaking, we have onto the north, we have this fig tree, the Central California Irrigation District fig tree ditch, and the Sherman Parkway storm drain. The fig tree ditch does discharge, or can discharge into the storm drainage channel, or be diverted slightly to the north and continue down into the into another Central California irrigation ditch system. In the central part of the city, there's the Inyo Avenue storm drain, which is the primary storm drainage route for the city's system. That also receives some ag tailwater from lands to the west, and we understand that there are currently flooding problems that occur on that system when there's a combination of storm water and agricultural water trying to utilize that storm drain. The Clary ditch is another ditch that runs maybe we might refer to as the south central ditch system. That was an old CCID system, which has kind of been taken over by the city to provide some storm drainage capability. There are restrictions also in that system at the intersection of Highway 33 and the ditch system, and not a lot of capacity available there for expansion, and it is essentially surrounded by development. However, on the south side of the city, there's the Miller Ditch system. This is a system that extends today from the CCID main canal, where it delivers water from there to points west, south, and east of the city. And it also acts as a drainage system, draining both waters out of the city. Stevens Ranch area, for instance, and can't think of, there's another subdivision also that's detained that goes into the Miller Ditch system, and so that drainage and this agricultural drainage still go through the Miller Ditch system. So we looked at that. This slide. I'll briefly point out those systems. The Fig Tree Ditch system, the northern area, it comes through here across. There's some restriction across the highway here. It comes across. It ties into the Sherman Parkway storm drain channel, or it can be diverted north and into a delivery channel of CCID. The Inyo storm drainage channel runs through here. That's the one that is primarily a city storm drain, but also picks up agricultural drainage water from all this area, a lot of this area. And again, the Miller Ditch that I talked about begins here at the main canal and runs essentially along the south side of the existing city, over and across, and then ultimately discharges into the Newman Wasteway. So in looking at the capacities of these various routes, we decided the best option for providing these drainage would be to have a main system on the north side, and have a main system, and which we refer to as the north side drain, have a main system on the south side, which we refer to as the south side drain. And then we have a little small drain that I'll talk to you about in a little bit over in the northeast corner, which is serves the industrial area in that corner. So we've established the general routes in which we want this. We're going to be taking this water, and I forgot to mention that the bifurcation or the separation of watersheds between the north side drain and the south side drain is at Hoyer Road. We have a little bit more of the west side going to the north than we do to the south. That appeared to be the best way to go based on topography, but also from the fact that you had already installed the Sherman Ranch storm drainage channel and had a lot of capacity in there that we could take advantage, so we could put a little bit more service area up that way than down to the south. So what did we look at on these for these drainage channels? On the north side drain, we looked at various conveyances west of Highway 33. We looked at both pipeline and open channels, and east of Highway 33 we looked just at open channel. For detention, we looked at utilizing no detention, utilizing detention in all sub areas, even though we realized that there may be some that we'd have to pump into the detention basin so that the basin would be high enough to have the separation from groundwater, or we just looked at having detention basins on the west of Upper Road. So these out of these different methods of providing conveyance and providing detention, we came up with 6 combinations of facilities for the south side drain. On the north side drain, very similar. We have conveyance and we have detention. West of Highway 33, we looked at both pipeline and open channel. East of Highway 33, we looked just at open channel. And detention, the same thing. We looked at having no detention. We looked at detention in all sub areas. Then we looked at detention west of Highway 33. And the reason we make that differentiation west and east of Highway 33 with regard to detention is because of the shallow groundwater that's west of Highway 33, and that we will have the much more costly detention basin to build, because we'd have to build pumping facilities to pump peak storm drainage discharge into that basin, and then either gravity out or maybe even pump out of the basin. Here again, we ended up with 6 combinations of different alternatives to be evaluated. And finally, on the northeast drain, this is the drain that serves the industrial property on the northeast corner. We're pretty sure that detention, if it's going to be there, it's going to have to be a raised basin, because the groundwater levels are almost to the minimum groundwater levels are almost to the ground surface. So while we could direct discharge, there would be impacts downstream. The discharge from these facilities goes through the city's wastewater treatment plant and to the city's storm water pump station, or that's near the wastewater treatment plant, that would have to be expanded in order to be able to discharge directly from this area. So out of these, we did fairly detailed cost estimates for all these options. If you see in the columns, the first column, as far as the numbers are concerned, we have the north side drain, we have the south side drain, and we have the northeast industrial area. Then we've got, we looked at the system that involved the just pipeline conveyance, and then we looked at the one that involves primarily surface conveyance for the main conveyance systems. And for the north side drain, if you look at that, it looks like the north side drain with direct discharge would be the most economical solution. However, there are a couple, and the main reason for that is we have a lot of capacity in the Sherman Ranch open channel, which means we don't have to do a lot of work in there to move water through that system without detention. However, in analyzing the system from the city basically out to the Newman Wasteway, we would have to, when the wasteway was flowing at its design capacity of 4,300 CFS, its water level would be fairly high, and it looked like there may be a potential there to have some backup that occurs in that system between the city and the wasteway, because that's very flat through there once that water raises in the wasteway. There was that issue, and then there's the benefits and the ability to regulate and control some of your water quality issues with having some of the detention basins installed. So because of that, we recommended that we utilize the in the case of the north side drain and the south side drain, that we utilize the surface conveyance with the with detention just on the west side only. So those were the cost estimates. We looked at the topography. We've talked about the groundwater conditions with being able to site detention basins. As we've discussed, we looked at how the existing conveyance features work in the area. We looked at the costs. We've understand what the use of detention basins are, the benefits of their use. And also, the city indicated city staff that they would prefer to utilize these green belt concrete lined open channels that are landscaped on both sides and have a nice meandering sidewalk along them, similar again to the Sherman Parkway storm drainage channel. And so we utilize those sorts of channels for the open channel systems. This is a rendering or a figure showing the recommended plan. I'll go over that briefly. We've got on the north side drain. We've got 3 sub areas here, and will require detention in each one of those sub areas. Exactly where that detention goes will be dependent upon development of area plans for those particular areas, but as far as the total amount of volume that they're going to have to be provided, that has to be set forth in the plan. But there's flexibility in where they're located, and as long as they don't build basins smaller than 5 acres, they could use 1 or maybe 2 basins for each one of these red areas. But they're connected together, this is connected with a pipeline system. This is an extension of the open channel from the Sherman Parkway, and then this is the existing Sherman Parkway channel that comes down through here. As you know, there's a detention basin on the existing Sherman Parkway, and with this proposal, that will still be there. You will not have to utilize it to obtain your 10-year protection level, but it's during storm frequencies higher than that, or if there's other reasons you prefer to utilize that, or if you have a capacity issue downstream, a channel problem, or so on and so forth, that detention basin would be available for use. On the south side system, we're essentially going to be building a system that ultimately that's going to parallel approximately where the Miller Ditch runs right now. Again, we utilize detention basins to serve these sub areas up in here. We have sufficient groundwater. It minimizes good groundwater separation. It minimizes our conveyance costs through this area. But from here on down, we have direct discharge of these areas into the system. As I mentioned earlier, this comes down and ultimately ties into the same channel that goes out to the wasteway. And again, the northeast area, industrial area, goes out through the existing channel, since we're utilizing detention at that space. One of the reasons we went with open channel and went with detention also in this area is that it allows these areas to develop and utilize the existing Miller Ditch to the extent that there is capacity in the Miller Ditch system, and hold off on building these improvements through here. That may not be the appropriate chronology depending on where the growth pressure is within the city, but it provides probably an optimum amount of options to be able to develop storm drainage facilities in that area. We recommend discharge at one point into the wasteway. We're recommending discharge with a combined capacity, and this includes the capacity of the existing. We also included the existing city system in this, not only the general plan expansion area. We'd have a discharge of about 390 cubic feet per second. That's a combination of both this direct discharge and detained discharge. And that would be discharged into the Newman Wasteway, which has a capacity through that area of 4,300 cubic feet per second. So it's less than 10%, just slightly less than 10% of what the available capacity is. We've had conversations with staff in the San Luis Delta Mendota Water Authority, who's the operating entity for that federal facility, and we've got indications that there should not be a problem in them issuing a license to be able to accommodate that discharge. It would require a combination discharge and energy dissipation structure, because if that channel is flowing at 4,300 CFS, it's pretty deep, and we don't have a lot of potential energy to dissipate from the water level in our channel to the water level in that channel. But if we're the only discharger going on, we'll have a drop of, I don't know what it is, 30 or 40 feet, which could cause some severe erosion problems. So that has to be built into that. We did look at the at actually crossing the wasteway with a pipeline, and then continuing on across through the China Island Refuge, and ultimately with a channel out to the San Joaquin River. but concluded fairly quickly that, and having some experience with what the government requires for crossing those types of facilities, that the cost of that would have been substantially more. We would have had quite a few more environmental issues to deal with. So after receiving what I would refer to as a positive response from the Water Authority, we designed, are recommending going into the wasteway. This summarizes the cost of the project I just talked to you about. It's about $20 million worth of construction to get all the way through it. We haven't broken it down into a bunch of benefit areas. It'll obviously depending on where you are in the system and how far your drainage has to be conveyed. You can argue that it costs more for one area to be for drainage service to be provided to that area than to be provided to another area. We've just given you an idea of what the average cost per acre is to provide the service. How the city ultimately decides to apportion these costs out to the various users is yet to be determined. So that's my presentation. I have up here and will answer any questions you might have.
Robert, I've got a question for you. What happens if the license to drain into the wasteway is not granted, or if at a later date that is revoked?
Well, in my 35 years' experience, once you get a license with the Bureau of Reclamation or with other authorities, even though they have so-called off-ramps, once those facilities in, they typically stay in. So I would say that there's not a lot of risk that they would revoke the license later on, unless there was some big water quality problem that resulted in, and you'd have to make some sort of attempt and maybe make some sort of headway at being able to address that.
We have that license at this current time?
You discharge, some of your water does go into the wasteway. In fact, the discharge pipe that goes into the wasteway is in need of repair, but it's only maybe a few percent of the size you will ultimately need.
But do we have that license now to discharge into the wasteway?
I'm not sure how you hold that. I know you discharge in there, whether you're actually licensed as it or you're discharging into that because sometimes when they built those facilities and they interrupted natural drainage ways, instead of building an expensive facility across the top of that wasteway, they just went ahead and discharged it into the wasteway, and so they took on the responsibility to accommodate that drainage. So that could be the answer to that. I don't know. They were pretty poor quality facilities they built in there, so it didn't look like it was federal government type of construction, but those things have to be worked out, but I think they will be worked out. They see the value to it. It's not a big issue to them. That's really viewed as waters of the United States, just like the San Joaquin River is. So you won't have any more, the discharge requirements there are going to be essentially what they will be in the San Joaquin River in the event you are under some sort of discharge requirement. But it certainly makes a lot more sense than going across. There is an old crossing. I don't know if you people are familiar with that. There's an old crossing across the wasteway that doesn't operate anymore. That would, you have to put something across like that would have to be, several fold bigger, and then you have to deal with constructing new channels through the China Island refuge. I've also had experience building major conveyance facilities through refuges and through the grasslands and through other environmental sensitive areas, and understand that can be a problem. And so because of those reasons, we sought going into the wasteway where you currently go, and it's a short distance really to the San Joaquin River and a very good facility to get there.
Thank you.
Robert, when will this document be printed, available? I see it's going to be on public review till the 31st. Will it be out this week, or?
It's ready to go out. Typically, we will get. I'm not sure what the city of Newman's process is. I guess it will go out to the general public, and then you're going to have a public hearing on it, and then I'm not sure. Michael's going to answer that better than I.
We have a printed copy at our counter right now, and then we will be issuing CD-ROMs to people who want those as well. So.
The reason I was asking is I haven't seen a copy of it yet.
Yeah, we didn't, because it was pretty big. We put in your report, if you just request a copy, we'll get a copy to you. I didn't know if each one of you wanted a full copy or not, but we can get that to you as soon as you're ready for it.
I would, thank you.
Okay.
Any other questions? Robert, thank you very
Thank
much. Item E, report on the wastewater collection system master plan.
Thank you, Mayor. Tonight, we're going to have the second of our master plans come before us. Again, we have four total master plans that this council has authorized staff to proceed with. The second one is the wastewater collection system. That is a series of pipes that hauls away your flushes and your sinks and your washing machines and takes that out to the treatment plant. So this does not actually address what's going to happen once we get to the treatment plant. That's another master plan that will be coming forward to you probably in the month of April, I believe. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Tiffany Knapp, and she's going to give you a presentation on the wastewater collection system.
I'll give us a second to get our presentation up. All right, good evening. Thank you once again for allowing me to come and speak with you. Again, my name is Tiffany Knapp, and I'm a senior engineer with Ecologic Engineering. And tonight I have Casey Yearout also with me. He was a project engineer on this particular project. And as Michael introduced, we are also performing the wastewater treatment plant master plan and the water master plan. And if you remember back a couple months ago, I came and did a little review of both this master plan and those other two and how linked they are. So this is the first from our standpoint of the series of those. I believe the water master plan is probably on the agenda for the next council meeting, and then
Pull the microphone closer, please, Tiffany.
and the wastewater one is, as Michael said, a little bit later on this spring. So to give you a little overview of what I'm going to talk about today, we'll start with kind of the purpose of the collection system master plan beyond just the takes your flushes to the wastewater treatment plant, which was a great summary from Michael. Talk a little bit about the development areas considered. It's basically the same ones as the storm drain. And then talk about the capacity analysis itself. We used a hydraulic model in order to simulate the flows and predict the capacities. And then, of course, you're interested in what the results were and what kind of improvements we would recommend. And then we'll talk a little bit about the next steps. So just as an overall assessment, wastewater collection systems, a master plan analyzes several things. We look at the existing system capacity and make sure that there's enough capacity available for just the existing residents that are here, as well as the ability to accommodate the build-out of the city. So the general plan build-out, which includes the infill of the existing city limits as well as the primary and secondary spheres of influence. During that, we need to establish a couple different criteria. One of those is the design storm level of protection, which again you heard Bob speak of. It's a little different for collection system, but the same idea that there's some level of storm of rainfall that we want to be able to handle in our sewer collection system. And then there's also some sort of criteria about what level of surcharging, what level of pipe fullness is acceptable in a collection system during an extreme event. So this helps us determine, as I said, what improvements are required for the existing system, if there's any at all, and what improvements would be needed or what additional conveyance systems would be needed for both interim and then long-term solutions for the general plan. And then, of course, the costs associated with any of those improvements and upgrades. And then if you do remember back a couple months ago, I talked about one of the major things that's coming down in regards to wastewater collection systems right now is a statewide waste discharge requirements, a permit that's a statewide basis that requires you to actually assess the capacity of your collection system. So this fulfills that requirement. It's one of the requirements of what's typically called the SS&P, and it fulfills one of those requirements. So once again, always what we're looking at is to make sure that the existing residents' needs are fulfilled and that the existing residents are only paying for their use of the system, which they've already bought into, and then any maintenance or upgrades that would be needed for this system that they've already bought into. And then the new residents actually pay for any new infrastructure that's needed, that they pay for any upgrades that may be needed if they're trying to get into the existing system, and their share of the existing system they may be able to use without doing, if there's capacity available, without doing any upgrades. So, as I mentioned, the development boundaries that we looked at are very similar to the storm drain master plan. We looked at the city limits, the existing level of development, and then we looked at the city limits with the infill, so completely built out of the city limits itself. Then we looked at the general plan build out, and we thought of it in two different areas, the primary sphere of influence and then what we call the secondary sphere of influence, and that would, secondary sphere encompasses all of the general plan areas. So this is a figure kind of giving you an idea of that. The yellow lines here are the city limits, and then probably be able to see better in your handouts that you have, but the purplish line here is the primary sphere of influence, and then this bigger line out here encompasses the secondary sphere. And just so you know, your wastewater treatment plant is out here, so that's ultimately where we're trying to get all the flow to go to. This figure is actually very similar to your general plan document. So the general plan that you adopted back in April of 2007, this is the land uses that are from that general plan document. And this is the existing land uses now. If you want to see in more detail, obviously you have that in your packets, or you can look up the general plan. But basically, all these different colors represent different types of land uses. And then within the city right now, these are the land uses. So a mixture of residential, commercial, obviously. And then from the general plan, we also have what kind of land uses are used for future. So these are mostly residential developments. And then obviously this represents some of the infill in here that would happen to areas that aren't developed right now within the existing city limits. So that kind of provides the general framework for what we look at. We were looking at the general plan build out, but also the steps ultimately to get up to that point. The collection system itself, your existing collection system has pipelines from 6 inches in diameter to 21 inches, and there's 8 pump stations with their associated force mains. We took all this information and incorporated it into a GIS database, a Geographic Information Systems database, and that also was incorporated in with the land uses, the existing and future land uses, parcel information, roads, the railroad, water bodies, those types of things. And you now have that database that's provided to you guys. It's a great system. A lot of communities are starting to use it to actually track mapping, for one. But beyond that, you can get into each piece of the mapping component. You can actually, it's a computer system, so you can click on it. It can bring up an attributes table. And from there, you can start tracking your infrastructure. So whether you choose to use it for that function, it's available. Your city staff could actually start to do asset management with it, for instance, being able to track the infrastructure. In this case, the sewer. We also have most of the water system in there as well. And so as you do maintenance, you could keep track of it in this database itself. So it's more than just a mapping tool. And as I said, that's a tool now available for staff. So this is the existing collection system. Basically, this is the existing city limits. All these little green dots are pump stations. And in general, the wastewater is collected from the city, and then there are 2 main trunk lines that convey the wastewater way out here to the treatment plant. So it's generally flowing from the south to the north, up here from the north to the south, and then into these main lines here and out to the plant. So once we have all the land use information, once we have all the infrastructure information, the pipe sizes and the manholes and the inverts and those types of things, another major component, obviously, is the actual flow itself. And flow can actually be broken down into several things. There's the sanitary flow, which is the wastewater itself. And we need to assess both the existing flow as well as the future flow. And then there's also a leakage into the system. Just by their very nature, pipes have cracks sometimes. Manholes aren't properly sealed, or just over time in a system develops a little bit of crack, so that can let in groundwater. Then also when you have a rain event, there is infiltration and inflow from, for instance, through manhole covers, or if there are residents who have connections from the roof drains directly into the sewer system, those types of things. So there's extra water that gets into the system beyond just the sanitary wastewater that comes through the pipes from your homes and that kind of thing. And we need to assess all that. We need to determine what that is, what the amount is, and if the system can convey it. So one of the things that is involved with the collection system master plan is actually monitoring flow. So last year at this time, we had flow monitors out within the city. There were 5 flow monitors, and that ended up being able to divide the city into 4 different basins. And that's how we actually end up determining the leakage rates in the system. We can compare our base flow that we're measuring on a really dry period of time to the flow that we measure during a rainstorm and correlate how much flow is getting in based on a certain type of storm. So this is the system divided into those flow basins. The little red dots are the flow monitors themselves. And the reason there's 5 flow monitors and 4 basins is because you actually have 2 trunk lines going to the wastewater treatment plant, and there's some interties between them. So in order to actually know what the total flow is headed out of the city before it gets to the plant, there's a monitor on each one of those, and we had to add those together to get the total flow. So basically what the different basins do is we have kind of a blue one up here. All that flows through this monitor and then eventually flows down in the trunk line. We have the kind of pinkish one here, flows directly into the trunk line. This orangish color flows basically up into the trunk line, and then the green one either north or south into it. This divides the city up into different basins so that we can then analyze the leakage rates separately for each of those basins. And if you'll notice, the pink area, for instance, is the older section of town. So that's an area that you'd expect to have more leakage since there's older sewers, and just over time, that's what happens. The areas get more leaky. Whereas, for instance, up here, we know there's a lot of newer development. We'd expect those sewers to be a lot tighter. So thus, they have different leakage rates. And so dividing up the system makes it so that we're able to actually quantify those and then apply them correctly when we go to analyze it. This is a quick summary of the average flows. This is the flow without any rain, just the sanitary flow itself from the system. The existing system right now has about 1 million gallon per day. 1.1 million gallon per day is what the residents of Newman generate and what's sent to the treatment plant to be treated. We predict based on land uses and generation values and comparing land uses and what we know about the city right now, we can create generation values which we then can use to project for build out the city limits or build out of the general plan. So for just building out the rest of the city limits, there's another 0.3 million gallons per day. For build out of the primary sphere, there's another 0.9, so almost another million gallon per day. And then the secondary sphere of influence has another 2.3 million gallons per day. So ultimately, full build out of the general plan, there's 4.6 million gallons per day of wastewater that we're predicting. So almost about, well, a little more than 4 times the amount that's now being produced. And one thing as kind of as a side note, the existing, if you look at that table, the existing 1.1 plus the build out of the city limits, the 0.3, equals right about what the capacity is at the wastewater treatment plant right now what you're permitted to discharge. So luckily they correlate very well. So as we get going here, this is kind of all of our base stuff that we got to get in there and actually in order to do anything with it. From there we go on to the actual analysis itself. So we used a hydraulic model called InfoWorks. It's a very dynamic model that allows us to, it's another computer program that allows us to put all this information in and then get predictions about, for each individual manhole, each individual pipe, how it reacts during certain conditions, whatever conditions we want to throw at it. But in that, we ultimately have to start with our pipes, our manholes, our inverts, our pump stations, our land use. So we incorporated all that general plan land use information. Subcatchments are dividing each little bit of the city into even smaller components than just the flow basins. We didn't model every single pipe. We didn't model every single 6-inch pipe, but instead took areas that we knew collected into certain manholes, and those are our subcatchments. So it's kind of dividing it down into even littler, smaller pieces. Obviously, we have wastewater flow, so wastewater generation values, and then, as mentioned with the flow basins, some sort of leakage rates, some sort of estimate of a percentage of infiltration and inflow that gets in there during storm events, during rainfall events. And then ultimately what we do with that is to calibrate it. We got to make sure this model is actually doing correctly what we would think it would do in a real life situation. So we take the modeled flows, the projected flows that the model gives us, and compare that to our flow monitoring data, what we actually received when we were out there last winter measuring these flows. And we can do that on a basin by basin basis to make sure that we are accurately predicting what would happen in the real system. So we did that for both dry weather flow, just again average conditions, and then also wet weather conditions. We have a couple criteria for analyzing the system. We have our modeled system. Like I said, we were cut down. We didn't do every single little teeny line out there. So we end up having 4 pump stations and all pipes 8 inches and greater, plus some little 6-inch lines that we needed to connect some 8-inch areas. We picked a design storm, which is a 10-year, 6-hour storm. So a little different than the stormwater collection system. So wastewater collection system, typically a 10-year, 6-hour storm is what you'd see for a community this size. We talked a little bit with city staff about what might seem appropriate and talked about various different sizes. And this is a very typical size for both the community of this size and also what we see in a lot of other communities around the Central Valley. And then also, as I mentioned at the very beginning, we have some sort of criteria for manhole surcharging, what kind of full pipe we allow during an extreme storm condition. So the next table gives us an idea of what that surcharge criteria was. So through discussions with city staff, we came up with this surcharge criteria. And again, this is all, well, maybe I shouldn't say all, that would be, presuming I know every single city, but most cities out there that I'm aware of actually have some sort of surcharge criteria that they actually allow their collection system to store some wastewater and infiltration during an extreme storm event. So during that design storm condition, it's okay if the pipe fills up all the way, and is even okay in some cases for the manhole to start filling up a little bit. So these are actually what the criteria that we used. We said that if a manhole is less than 4 feet deep, we don't want any of that flow starting to go up in the manhole. That's too shallow, because once it starts going up in the manhole, it's a pretty quick process for it to actually start coming out of the top of the manhole, and people are not normally happy with that. So if it's less than 4 feet deep, no surcharging allowed. If it's between 4 to 7 feet, there is a little bit of surcharging allowed, but you're not able to exceed 2 feet below the ground surface. So we'll allow a little bit, we'll allow some storage in there, but again, not getting up to the very top of the pipe or top of the manhole itself. And then if the manhole is greater than 7 feet, we'll allow a little bit more of that storage. So now the exciting part. What were the results, and what do we actually recommend from what we saw with the results? We looked at, like I kind of talked about a little bit to begin with, we looked at basically 3 different conditions: the existing system, the build out of the city limits, and then the primary and secondary spheres of influence. And then in that, looking at those cases, we also kind of looked at the interim solutions, what might happen in between that build out of the city limits and the primary and secondary, because obviously you're not going to get all of your primary sphere or all of your secondary sphere build out at the same time. So this is a look at kind of what the results were for the existing system, and in a second I'm going to zoom in on certain areas. But basically you have your whole system, you have all your modeled pipes, again, all going toward this trunk line. And there's certain areas here that we identified that either are a little bit close or actually where we would say there are some issues. So if we zoom in on this, this is just kind of that middle area. The areas in light blue here, there, and up here are areas where we see some surcharging exists, but it's within that criteria I talked about, within that table. So there's a little bit that exists, but we would say it's within an acceptable level. The one area that we do see issues is right down here at the discharge of the Prince Road pump station. There's a pipeline down here that's really shallow, and there is surcharging that exists. And since the criteria was for really shallow manholes that no surcharging is allowed, that's beyond the criteria that we selected. So that was the existing system. If we actually look at full build out of the city limits, so adding that other little bit of flow, full build out, everything's developed and built out within the city limits still. We have the same type of thing, same system here, same areas identified. If we blow up on that section again, some of these blue areas get a little bit bigger, where there's more areas that are a little bit of concern, but again, in the surcharge criteria, within that what's listed on that table. We still have a problem down here because we haven't done anything to it, and we've now just added more wastewater. And we also, this area up here that was blue before, now we say there's actually an issue beyond what's acceptable. So for recommended improvements for these two areas, this is the area down by the Prince Road pump station, and this is the area up by the Yancey pump station. So over here, basically, like I said, it's a pipe. It's a small diameter pipe. It accepts the discharge from that pump station, and it's a very shallow pipe. So what we'd recommend is actually upsizing that pipe. It'll allow for a little bit more storage within the pipe because the pipe's bigger. It can handle a little more flow and alleviate that surcharging. And then for the situation over here, it's actually a little bit of a minorly complicated thing. There's a relief line from the pump station. So in case the pump station is filling up too much, the pumps can't keep up, there's actually a relief line that spits into this main line right here, and that's the line that's highlighted. Well, the problem with that is, from the information we have, that line is right in the flow path of this main line, which means if this main line starts to surcharge at all, the wastewater goes up the relief line, essentially the wrong direction. It's relieving the wrong direction, which is not good. So what it does is it causes the flow to essentially circulate, causes the pumps just to be circulating the wastewater instead of actually pushing it downstream. The good news is there's a very easy fix for that, and that is to basically put a flap gate right on the end of that pipeline so that the wastewater is able to come down the relief line the way it's supposed to go, but as it starts surcharging, it doesn't go up the relief line. Again, pretty simple fix there. So we estimate the cost of both of these improvements to be around $50,000. So that's the existing system, and the good news is the existing system, for the existing residents, the system's in great shape. A lot of times we do these and we look at just the existing system, again, no build out, no extra developments, and we say, uh-oh, you're in trouble. You've got all sorts of improvements you need to do out there because your system right now can't even handle a design storm. That's not the case here. The case here is, I know $50,000 isn't pennies, but very small compared to millions of dollars just to accommodate what the existing residents have already paid for. So beyond this, now we start looking at what happens when we add development based on the general plan projections. And like I said, we want to look at interim capacity because we know that you're not going to just be able to go out there and the first little guy who comes along and says, I want some more capacity, okay, fine, go build a $10, $20 million pipeline. That's, I'm guessing, not likely how it'll work out. So we were looking at the existing system to see if there are ways that we can accommodate some of the growth within the existing system and just see what it would take kind of to do that. So unfortunately for developers, I guess, the existing system has very little extra capacity. It fits right now with what the residents and also build out to the city limits, what will be needed to handle build out of the city limits. But beyond that, there's really very little capacity that exists. And so in order to accommodate on either an interim basis or on a permanent basis any developments beyond the city limits, there are upgrades or there are different things that need to be done. So this is a schematic that represents, this just represents the primary sphere of influence. We figured that, as it's identified in the general plan, is the first thing to be built out beyond the city limits itself. And it also shows the pipelines, the major trunk lines, and their available capacity in EDUs, or in some cases, their not available capacity. So if we can actually zoom in a little bit on this one, I don't think you have the zoomed in version in your packet, just so you know, you'll have to squint a little bit. But this is, again, the city limits along here. These other colored areas here, and there, I believe, are primary sphere of influence areas, so general plan areas. Most of these are residential units, I believe, a little bit of commercial, and high density or mixed use residential. We've identified how many EDUs, that's equivalent dwelling units, so taking it back to what's the equivalent of a single family home, for instance, even if it's a commercial area or a multifamily area, what's the equivalent single family home. So the EDU, equivalent dwelling unit, we've identified these different areas that were identified in the general plan, how many EDUs each one of these are, and then within each of these lines here, how much capacity exists. And there's actually, on the less blown up version, there's a color-coded chart about how much capacity is available for each of the colors. And then we picked out some of the lines that are most limited here and kind of said, you know, this one, for instance, is 218 EDUs. So that line right there is one of the most capacity limited, and it could handle up to 218 EDUs. Now, probably the more important thing is these areas circled in red here. These are areas that right now, well, I shouldn't say right now, either right now or at build out of the city limits are at capacity. They're right there. That's all they can handle. So in order to accommodate any of these different developments, these areas would need to be upsized. And one thing to realize here, and actually one of the things that really helps with using this dynamic model that we use, is that we can see the effect even downstream. Because a lot of times you look at and you say, I don't know, let's see, where should I pick an area? Let's say you want to get in some development over here, and you say, oh, I need to upsize this line right along here. So you upsize that line. What's that do? It makes it easier for the flow to get downstream, and guess what? There's another area down here that has issues. So being able to, it ends up just pushing the problem further downstream. So being able to look at that in a kind of a piecemeal fashion that, okay, well, we have an issue here, but then how does that affect now down here? Or even if we didn't have this, we may fix this and then we may cause a problem down there that didn't used to be there. So we need to make sure we're looking at all those situations, being able to look at the bigger picture if we're looking at accommodating any other areas. But these can be, there are ways to accommodate the kind of the edge of the city limits, the primary sphere within the existing system. It just would require upgrades to the existing system itself. So looking a little more at long-term needs, ultimately what would we expect from the build-out of the general plan itself? And as I said, the existing system can't accommodate the full primary and secondary sphere of influence build-out, and we would propose to have new trunk sewers for the full build-out of the city or of the general plan. So this is a schematic that represents what that would be. These are all, this is again, the primary sphere is mostly this area, a couple other little areas, and then the secondary sphere is down to the west and to the south. And it is a little hard to see here, but there's a line that goes up here. It changes colors because we're recommending pipe size changes there. So it starts out about a 12-inch diameter and then grows larger, collects all of the wastewater of this area, and then turns and heads over to the treatment plant, again, where we want to get everything, along a west to east route. And then right here on, I believe it's Hoyer Road, is that road right there, is where this area would go south and then kind of north to the treatment plant. And we picked that area because there's a natural higher topography where it slightly slopes downhill towards the treatment plant. And at this point, north and south slopes downhill. So this is these two trunk lines, larger trunk lines that would end up collecting each of the development's wastewater. The south trunk, we're estimating, would be about a $10 million trunk, and the north trunk would be a $9 million trunk. So what are the next steps involved? As Michael, I think, mentioned, there's a public comment, public review period for the next month or so. And then after that, I believe it comes back to you guys for approval. And then from there, we'd recommend that you evaluate your impact fees for the primary and secondary spheres of influence. Make sure that you're preparing yourselves to either, depending on how the city wants to take care of it, but basically to have those trunk lines in place when those developments come along. We'd also recommend performing those existing system improvements, those couple little things to make sure that you're ready for a 10-year, 6-hour storm or something, a larger storm. We definitely didn't witness that last year, and I don't believe we witnessed anything near it when we looked at records back 2006, 2005, 2004, that kind of time frame. So you haven't seen the design storm that we're looking for at this point. Also, if there is an interest from the city in accommodating some growth beyond the city limits, determining what that ability is, and that would be dependent on city staff and the council to decide how to do that and what developers that might be. And then ultimately decide when to build those trunk sewers. When is the catalyst that kicks off okay, now we need to get those trunk sewers in place. We're not going to accommodate anymore within the existing facilities themselves. So with that, I'd like to thank you very much. And if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Questions? Apparently not.
It's an exciting subject. Once
It
again.
is.
Great job.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mayor,
Yes.
may I request we just take a 5-minute recess, and that would allow our consultants to go ahead and grab their laptop if necessary to clean up. the
Sounds
space.
good. Take a 5-minute break.
I'm glad to hear that we're in good shape, huh?
Yes, sir.
For example. I'm sure I can get a collection, John. We can,
What's that?
10 million that needed down in my area in the south.
Yeah, we only need 48 million,
Yeah.
so you can flush better.
I flush good now.
The meeting back to order. We're going to pull item F, schedule that for the next meeting. We'll move on to G, review of Enterprise Zone 40 map.
Thank you, Mayor. As you know, Doug Sweetland from the Alliance came and gave a presentation to the council regarding the enterprise zone. And what staff did is we went ahead and prepared a map based upon the city's general plan and existing land uses, and we have that in your packet for you today. We just wanted to make sure we got your concurrent with what you saw there, and we would like to proceed forward in preparation of the pre-application so we can submit that to the Alliance and to the enterprise zone group and get the process rolling forward. That's actually, this was actually done on our GIS system too, so a first glance there, but this is very rudimentary on what you can really accomplish with GIS, but it did help us with that preparation of this map. So with that, if we can get at least some council concurrence on this, staff will go ahead and move forward and submit that application to the Alliance for this, unless we have any questions.
Any questions?
No, that's good.
Everybody concur with the,
Yes.
sure nice to have that GSI to get things done like that, huh? It's
Yes.
a lot
Michael,
less work.
we're talking when now? Was it, what did he say, 3 months or?
No, he says we have a pre-application that's about 30 days, and I think the state has to respond in 45 days once we get our final application in. So,
Okay.
in all likelihood, we're hoping within the next 90 days that enterprise zone is here in Newman.
Good.
So,
Okay. Item H, report from Supervisor DeMartini.
Good evening, Mayor Fantasia, council members. A very short report tonight. I came to tell you that today, at our board meeting, we did pass the landfill use plan. This is something that's been in the works for a long time. It's essentially was unchanged from the presentation that we gave you a few weeks ago. We also gave the same presentation to Patterson. It provides for 100 years of capacity, I think probably 100 plus, depending on the waste to energy plant and how long that lasts. It has 3 primary phases at different cells. We're in phase 1 now, then phase 2 we'll be moving to in probably 10 years, and then the last phase probably won't be for about 60 years. It pays for the enterprise fund back $1.3 million for 140 acres excuse me, of unused land, and it provides sufficient land for wildlife mitigation. It also incorporates long-term ag leases in the unused land until it's needed for landfill operations. And I would imagine a lot of that land will be farmed for 60, 70 years on some of it. So we're going out this year, probably this fall, for long-term leases. And there was one provision I added myself in there, that there would be no solicitation from the county for imported waste from out of the county. And that is, what caused the problem a few years back, where we had a business partner, the CEO, trying to bring in waste from the Bay Area, medical waste, and as far down as Tulare. So, and that provision was added today, so there will be no solicitation to bring in garbage from out of county. So hopefully this chapter is behind us now, and we have a long-term plan, and there won't be any solicitation of waste. So it's over. I think it's been a long haul to get this policy done and pay back the enterprise fund, but I think we've done that today, and I think we've put it behind us. That's all I have.
Great, thanks, Jim.
Thanks, Jim.
Thank you, Jim. City manager and staff reports.
thank you, Mayor. For those who saw in the newspaper, there's an advertisement currently available for a community service officer in the city of Newman. That advertisement is being done to allow some cross-training. I'm proud to announce that our community service officer, Edgar Lopez, will be going to the academy and becoming a Newman police officer in 6 months. So that academy starts in July, and the goal was to get a CSO on board so that there can be some cross training, and our existing Edgar Lopez can get out there, train him, and kind of set the pace for him about, you know, the position, what to expect, and the expectations of not only the city manager and the chief of police, but also the city council. So with that, Edgar can make a fine addition to our sworn staff. So our police chief interviews are moving forward. We have identified two candidates. With that, I'm going to again pull the council and make sure that we're still available for March 4th for a special meeting to interview those candidates. We had talked about that before. I just want to make sure that you're still on board with that.
Is everybody okay with that? Did we want to start at 6 instead of 7?
I was thinking either 5:30.
5:30 is great too.
Is that
everybody
an
able to
okay
make
time
it
for
at
everybody?
5:30? Mm-hmm.
Okay. So we'll make sure that we get that posted accordingly.
Okay.
And we'll be moving forward with that. Last week, Councilman Creamclaw and the mayor and I joined the fire chief, Mel Souza, who's here for third time in a row. Hey.
Wow.
And
Last time too.
And George Vargas. We all went to Patterson. As you know, this council provided and agreed to participate with a joint fire protection study between the city of Patterson, West Stanislaus Fire District, and the city of Newman. The preliminary findings were submitted to us on that. There didn't seem to be a whole lot of likelihood that in any near time future that all three would merge together and consolidate. However, there could possibly be some cost savings with sharing some management staff and consolidating some management staff on that. While no decision has been made, the presentation was made, and the mayor and Councilman Creamclaw and I will be going back, as well as the fire chief and Mr. Vargas, to discuss some of those findings. It was a long presentation, you know, hour and a half or maybe 2 hours, and we needed to digest that and then get back to them with some comments and how we're going to proceed forward. And part of what we're going to be talking about at the next one is, how do those findings come out? Is it a long report? Is it a short report? Is it one presentation and you get all three, the two councils and the board of directors together, or do we do multiple presentations? Do they come here and just do a presentation for the city of Newman and then do a separate presentation for the city of Patterson? So those are some of the decisions that we'll probably be making I believe in March. I don't think we've set the date yet, but we'll be moving forward with that.
Michael, I think the thing that caught my ear about that meeting was joint training for the volunteers.
Yes.
That's the main thing.
And that's
at this time, I think.
That's correct. Where all three agencies could benefit from having a single training officer or a couple of different training officers, joint training, so, you know, it's consolidated. You know, lots of our volunteers also volunteer with West End and the like. So you saw tonight, we're going with this. We're all going to adopt the same IIP program. That's a good first step, because you don't want different policies and procedures for Newman firemen who are responding to a West End call. You know, you want to have consistent policy and procedure, so everybody's doing things consistently and within OSHA standards. All signatures have been placed on the SCM city reimbursement agreement. We got that recorded yesterday. And so that's all wrapped up finally after 2 years. So we'll be working with our accounting department. We've already had one meeting and figuring out how to track all of that. And then we'll be getting that information out to the building department as well. So, and then lastly, the mayor indicated he didn't get a copy of the letter I sent to the Regional Water Quality Control Board. Did the rest of you get that in your packet? It was a 2-page letter.
In the packet?
Yeah, because was it in your other one? Because I know Alicia was going to put that in there. Do you recall?
I don't feel so bad
Okay.
there if nobody else got one.
Okay, we'll make sure that you got it. We sent a letter to the Regional Water Quality Control Board because they've been holding up our storage basin expansion and the like. So it's a 2-page letter. It'll be in your box tomorrow. I apologize. I thought that we had made the appropriate copies and got those in your packets, and that was my error. So I'll make sure that we get that into your box, and it'll be going out to you this week. So. So with that, I can entertain any questions that you might have for me.
Questions?
On Edgar's going to the academy, is the city of Newman supporting that?
We will be sponsoring that, and we will be coming back the proposal for the council to make sure we sponsor him, not only sponsor him, but give him a stipend to go through the academy.
I think that's an excellent idea.
Yeah, so
Excellent.
that'll be coming forward to you in the next budget. So that'll be the city manager's recommendation that we sponsor not only and pay for the academy, and then give him a stipend that will accommodate his living. He'll be doing this as a full time. There's an extended academy, correct, Councilman? And then there's which is a year long, but it's only part time type thing. This other one is a 6-month, every day, basically 8 to 5 type job, and so we would treat it accordingly. So we'll be coming back with a new position, kind of a police officer academy type position, and then that will include a stipend.
You mentioned July, so that'll be in our, we'll be able to put that in our next budget. Huh?
You will find that in your next budget.
Okay.
Yes.
Sounds good. Any further questions? Thank you, Michael. Other staff reports? Everybody's pointing fingers back there. Oh. Let's just go from left to right, Chief, since you're, or you're right, my left.
Mayor, members of the City Council, a couple items I'd like to bring to your attention. An arrest that occurred last week of interest was a forgery case that started in Los Banos, which involved checks stolen out of Newman. So as we followed up the investigative leads on that case, it took us to a house on Yosemite Park Road. And as the officers were conducting that forgery investigation, it led to a search of the residence, which then uncovered chemicals for the manufacturing of methamphetamine, which involved the arrest of the subject. And that investigation is continuing to see if there's any connection with the previous drug lab, which we covered over on Lady Slipper. As you can tell, there's lots of construction going on with the police department. Let me just give you an update. Previously, we had the heater, air conditioner replaced. The doors, the front door has just recently been replaced, so that completes the door window replacement project. The fascia boards along the City Hall and Police Department have been replaced, the ones that are rotted out. And we are now moving forward to getting bids so we can paint the Police Department as well as City Hall. You'll also notice that the fire base doors have been removed and replaced with a roll-up door and stucco to give the complete appearance of the wall. So that's very exciting. The locker room project is being completed as we speak right now. Again, this is a project that was taken on by the troops. The city manager generously gave the money for the materials, and the troops jumped in to provide the labor. It was a win-win situation. They have put in numerous hours of their own time to make this project work, and it's a real strong sense of ownership, and it's a very, very professional looking job. And I know some of you on the break took a look at it, and it's
very nice
to be proud of. And a couple of other items. I don't know if I've already reported this out, but Brett Short has been appointed detective, so we've filled that detective position. And today we conducted interviews to fill the full-time office assistant, administrative assistant position in the police department. We had the first round interviews today, and the second round will be on Friday. And I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Chief, I had a question on code enforcement. I was pleased to see that it looked like either they stepped up the program or they started reviewing other areas that they hadn't reviewed in the past. I was appalled at those pictures. I mean, I just couldn't believe it. I mean,
yes, a couple things have happened. We have lined up a contractor who's now going out and doing those actual abatements that have been previously approved by council. So those previously approved, not to repeat myself, but those are now being cleaned up. And Edgar is making more and more on-views on code enforcement issues, as well as the response to the complaints that come in from the citizens. So it's a very proactive and assertive program on code enforcement.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Chief, I was just wondering, were those checks stolen? I mean, were they out of mailboxes or what? Where did that?
There were 2 suspects arrested. The checks came from one of the suspects' mother, or actually her grandmother. Yeah. So that's where the checks came from.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief.
Okay, and I'd like to thank the council's support beforehand for Edgar Lopez attending the academy. He's worked very hard. He deserves this. And I believe it's the first time in the last 10 years that we've actually sponsored somebody in the police academy. And I couldn't be more proud of Edgar Lopez. Thank you.
Can I make one other comment? Does that mean then that he can play for us in softball?
He's still a member of the police department.
Well, yeah, but July.
Thank you.
Yeah, he does
Thank you,
report to
Chief.
Stephanie, I think. doesn't he?
Other staff reports? Nothing else? Okay, everybody's shaking their head no back there, so. Items from the council members, Ed?
I just have one item, and I've given a lot of thought over the last couple of weeks. In our last meeting, we had a presentation on the K-9 program, which I'm a huge supporter of. And I think the fact that we put some money forward to kind of get that jump started, as I thought about it, and I'm thinking that we're basically having our, the officers, and kudos to them wanting to go out and raise that money. I'm not sure I'm just real comfortable with the fact that we got our police officers out basically begging for money to get this program off the ground. I don't know how successful they've been at this point trying to raise those funds, but I'm not comfortable having them do that. I think if we're going to have a program, which we had one at one time, was very successful. I think if we're going to do it, I think we ought to do it right and get it going. I don't know that, in fact, I know we don't need 2 cars. I think 1 car can be converted and can be used by 2 officers on different shifts. They have an A squad and a B squad that I'm familiar with. And the idea was to have a K-9 on one squad and K-9 on the other squad. Therefore, we'd have 7 days a week, there'd be a K-9 available. I'm assuming that those dogs would be used primarily like on a cover shift or swing shift, where they're available days, afternoons, and PMs. And I just kind of want to get an idea and a consensus from the council, how the rest of you felt. I think it's a worthwhile program, and I would really like to see it getting going. But I would like to see this city, get behind it, and obviously we're gonna have to budget for it from year to year. I like to make sure that we have policies and procedures in place, a training program in place, all that stuff done before it's actually implemented. But we're talking another $15,000, and as I thought about it, we kicked down $30,000 to help get a radio station off the ground.
I agree.
We've kicked down money for other programs, and I just think it's a worthwhile program. I think that we can take one of our patrol cars, spend the $3,000 to $4,000 it's going to take to equip it right, because we don't want another incident like Merced PD had. I would like to see this council and the city fund this and budget for it and get the program off, and not have the officers have to go out and try to raise the money. I just kind of want to throw that out and get some feedback from the rest of you, what your thoughts are.
I would think that maybe we can take a look at the budget, see if we have any money left this year. And if not, maybe bring back a report for the next meeting. And if not, we can work towards it for next fiscal year.
Yeah, I'd be pleased to announce that they've probably already secured close to $4,000 just through talking and getting articles in the newspaper. The goal wasn't to get the officers out there to beat the bushes and do that. The goal is more to get the community participate and to buy into this, because they're also a part of the program there, and the businesses and the school district and the like. And Rotary's getting involved with this. The school district is going to be involved with this. You know, there's a few target ones that you hit, and we're going to far exceed the $15,000. This program will go forward, no matter how much they come back with. This is the program that's on the go. But you know, they wanted a shot at it, and in all fairness to them, you know, we put that out there and allow them to do that. I think it's just a way to show and get the community involved and get them excited about the canine program. And that was part of the emphasis and why we went down that direction. I fully understand where Councilman Caton's is coming from. You know, this is a program that does benefit the city. And you know, if they were to give $500, I would tell you that we're still going to fund the project and get it going on there. So, with that, you know, I would just request that we give it a little bit of time, see how the community responds, and then go forward from there. And then we'll make the appropriate adjustments in making sure that, you know, the project is fully funded when it's time to implement. So. With that, I can also tell you that, you know, they're going to already start looking at dogs. They'll probably go down next week or the week after. There's a new shipment of dogs that are coming in, and they're going to go down and take a look. So.
Randy, have you identified a vendor for the equipment for the vehicle?
Not at this point. We have 2 or 3 vendors, but we want to check out exactly what they provide and what cost they provide.
And then there's also, as Councilman Caton probably knows, there's a period of time where the dogs just bond with the officers before they even start training. You know, I think there's a 4 to 6 week period in there. Correct me if I'm wrong, Chief. Where there's a bonding period before the training even starts, because, you know, the 2 personalities. You know, the dog has a personality, and the handler has a personality, and they have to kind of get to know each other to make sure they're going to work well together. So. It's not going to jump up and get going right away. There's still some time in there, and we'll be working towards meeting all those. The policies and procedures are important to me as the city manager, because I'm also serve as your risk management, and you know, that's an important factor. I know your city attorney over there will tell you the same thing.
Well, obviously, we'd have to go to Tom for review.
Yeah, but you know, we work with the RMA, and the RMA is one of those agencies that represents over 50 different agencies. So there's definitely going to be a policy and procedure that we can pull from them, and then customize that fits Newman. So.
Well, again, I appreciate it. My main thing is I just didn't want to see a holdup. You know, if we're going to talk about, gee, we only have enough money to get 1 dog right now, and my whole thought was is secure the 2 dogs, get the program going. There is going to be this 6 to 8 week period, you know, before they can actually do any training, and I didn't see a need for 2 cars. I know we don't have a take home program, so unless the officer lives here in town, then I wouldn't have any objection to that. But the car could be shared between 2 squads and just convert 1 unit.
Yeah, and that's the plan, and we are planning to move forward with 2 dogs, not seeing how much funding comes in and then. Okay, we only have enough for 1 dog. We're moving forward with 2 dogs. It's a 2-dog program, and yeah, they're going to be sharing some of the facilities, but we want to make sure that we have a safe vehicle for the animals and for the handler, and making sure that they share that accommodation. So.
Okay.
Like, just a quick question. I was just wondering, when is Little League kickoff?
Practice or games?
The game. Well, don't they have like a parade or anything like that?
Yeah, I believe that's around the 3rd week of March, the 15th. Yeah, right around the 15th of March will be the opening day ceremonies.
Well, just my opinion, but the demonstration that we saw out there that night was really impressive. And I think if you're going to have a captive audience already, but put on have those officers come back and just put on a little show just to show them what we're talking about. I mean, that was impressive to watch that dog just. Oh.
Yeah. Well, we'll look for more venues to take part in that. I don't know that the opening ceremonies from Little League, and we don't want to detract from the kids that day and what they're trying to achieve.
Just a thought.
But we'll keep that in mind and continue to try to identify events that really can help us showcase those animals, especially once we start getting them here. And you know, I think by the end of March we may have animals. So
that would be great too.
And then that would start that bonding period again.
Are you volunteering, Ted, for the suit?
No.
Oh,
Did you see that dog go for that thing? So quick. Whoa, scary.
We might need somebody for a
Scary.
presentation, so.
Yeah, dedication.
You had anything else? Or?
Nope, that's it.
Thank you.
Just very
Tim.
quickly, Ernie and his staff, and Ernie's not even here, but that fence that I told you about, that was that drainage, that reservoir area, it's been put up and it's beautiful and it just enhances the whole neighborhood again. So Ernie, thank you very much, and his staff.
That it?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thanks, John.
Bob?
I have nothing, Mayor.
Nothing? Mike?
Mr. Mayor, I would like to concur with Councilman Caton. I think the K-9 program is a very important program. I think it'll benefit the city greatly. The faster we get going on it, the full support of the city behind it. I can see nothing but good things in relation to helping to deter gangs from living in our city. Meth labs, if it's known that we have dogs that are cross-trained, they might think twice about deciding to locate Newman, and I'm 100% behind it. The sooner we get it in place and the more the city funds it, the happier I will be. That's all I have, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. I just want to remind the council and the mayor pro tem that I will not be here the first meeting in March. I will be in DC trying to get a
Or we can run wild.
trying to get that other
Yeah,
last
we can,
800,000 that we need for the
You're
Worst
in
Stimulus
trouble.
project.
Yeah.
And then also the end of March on the 27th, the League of California Cities is hosting a quarterly meeting, and it's going to be hosted by City of Modesto at the McHenry Museum. So hope to see everybody at that. Going to have a guest speaker from Secretary of Business Regulation and Housing from the state of California. Probably just going to tell us how many billions are in the hole, but might be interesting stuff.
Passing a cup.
Pass the cup around. And our chamber John T. Severa Awards has been postponed from March till August. And we'll get the date at the next meeting for that, once it's verified. And I think that's all I had. I will motion to adjourn. Do I have a second? All in favor?
Second.
Meeting adjourned. Thank you very much.
Thank you.